Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we don't just read books, we break them wide open. If you're hungry for insights that fuel success, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Hit subscribe, drop a comment with your favorite takeaway, and share this episode with someone who's ready to level up. Let's turn pages into power. Let's explore in detail.
So today, we're diving into John Doerr's Measure What Matters. Specifically, we're looking at objectives and key results of OKRs.
Right.
Doerr calls them a sharp-edged tool for world-class execution, which I think is a great description.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this isn't some, brand new idea. It's got history.
Yeah.
Started at Intel, then became absolutely massive at Google.
Exactly. We're going to unpack how this OKR framework can really sharpen focus, build accountability, and, push you and your teams towards those big, ambitious goals.
Our goal here is to pull out the really essential stuff from Doerr's book.
Yeah.
Give you the core ideas so you can see how maybe you could use them yourself.
Yeah, get past the buzzwords and into the practical application.
Okay, let's dig in then. The book kicks off back at Intel, 1971, and it introduces Andy Grove, who Doerr calls the greatest manager of any era. Quite the statement.
It is. Grove was, instrumental at Intel. His whole management style was about clarity, about rigor, and OKRs came out of that need to align everyone strategically.
And the basic idea was pretty straightforward.
Deceptively simple, really. The objective, that's your direction, where you're trying to go. The key results, those are the specific, measurable steps they tell you if you're actually getting there.
And Grove was really strict about those key results being measurable, wasn't he? Like black and white.
Oh, absolutely. He insisted, yes, no, simple, no judgments. That was the rule. It cuts out all the wiggle room,
Right.
Doerr gives an early Intel example. Objective was dominating the mid-range microcomputer market. A key result. Get 10 new designs done for the 8085 chip. Super specific. You either did it or you didn't.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For the book, John Doerr himself was there, right? As an engineer at Intel, seeing this unfold.
Yeah, that was huge for him. A formative experience. He actually uses the word mesmerizing to describe seeing structured goals like this for the first time.
Wow.
He even talks about typing up his first OKR on an old IBM typewriter and, crucially, posting it publicly. That really cemented the power of the system for him.
But it wasn't just Grove inventing this in a vacuum. Peter Drucker played a role.
That's right. Grove definitely built on Drucker's thinking. Things like consulting with your team, balancing long and short-term goals, teamwork, making sure individual aims line up with the company's. All those Drucker ideas are baked into OKRs.
And at Intel, this wasn't just a memo that went out. It sounds like it was really part of the company culture.
Completely. Doerr says OKRs were Intel's lifeblood back then. They were discussed in one-on-ones every week, in staff meetings, divisional reviews. It was constant reinforcement, kept thousands of people pulling in the same direction.
And that idea of less is more seems pretty central too.
Very central. Grove was adamant. Focus on just a few important objectives, maybe 3 to 5 per cycle. And each of those only gets, say, 5 key results max. It forces you to prioritize what really counts.
And it wasn't all dictated from the top down either.
No, that's key. Grove encouraged teams and individuals to actually write about half of their own OKRs, obviously in discussion with their managers. It creates buy-in, ownership.
Yeah.
Makes people care more about hitting the goals.
Okay, fast forward a few decades. Doerr takes this powerful tool, this OKR idea, to a small, up-and-coming company, Google.
Yeah, quite the moment. He meets Larry Page and Sergey Brin, sees this incredible vision, but also realizes, they needed some structure. They were brilliant, but maybe lacked the management systems for scaling.
And how did Page and Brin react? Here's this system from, an older tech giant.
They loved it. Doerr said it was a great impedance match. It just fit. They immediately saw the value in writing goals down, making them public, keeping everyone on the same page as the company grew like crazy.
And then Eric Schmidt comes in as CEO later, and he reinforces OKRs.
He did. Schmidt really doubled down on them. He talked about Google needing to be a systematic innovator of scale, and OKRs were the mechanism to manage and measure that innovation across the board.
And you can't really argue with the results, can you? Doerr points to all those Google products with, like, a billion users.
Exactly. Search, Chrome, Android, Maps, YouTube, Gmail, Google Play. Doerr argues OKRs were the scaffolding that allowed Google's think big culture to actually build these massive successes.
And Larry Page stayed involved personally. even down to engineer level.
Apparently so. Deeply involved in reviews, even looking at individual engineers' OKRs. That shows real commitment from the top.
You mentioned a specific example, the code yellow battle against latency back in 2008. What was that about?
That's a classic case study. It was a company-wide OKR focused entirely on reducing the lag time, the latency in their systems. It showed how you could use an OKR to rally the entire company around one critical, urgent problem. Really powerful.
And beyond just products, Google always ranks high as a place to work. Doerr thinks OKRs play a part there too.
He does suggest that. Obviously, leadership, resources, culture, they're all huge. But he argues OKRs contribute by providing clarity, transparency, a shared sense of purpose, which all add up to a better work environment.
And Schmidt's quote is pretty definitive. OKRs changing the course of the company forever. Hard to get a stronger endorsement.
Not really, no. It sets the stage perfectly for understanding why Doerr is so evangelical about them. And this leads him to define what he calls the 4 superpowers of OKR.
Okay, the 4 superpowers. Let's break them down. Superpower number 1, focus and commit to priorities.
Right.
This links back to that less is more thing, right?
Directly. The best organizations are ruthless about focus. They say no a lot. Because if you try to do everything, you end up achieving nothing, really. Too many goals just muddies the water.
Doerr uses that example of Brett Kopf from Remind early on. His goal wasn't even a typical business metric initially.
Right. His first OKR, before maybe even calling it that, was just to interview 200 teachers. He needed to deeply understand the problem he was trying to solve in education.
So not a vanity metric, but real insight.
Exactly. It was about focusing on the core issue. It highlights Doerr's point. Your main objectives have to be significant. You've got to put, as he says, more wood behind fewer arrows.
Makes sense. Concentrate your fire.
Precisely. That's focus and commitment.
Okay, superpower number 2. Align and connect for teamwork. How do OKRs help different teams work together?
Well, they act like a kind of cooperative social contract. Everyone agrees on the priorities and how progress will be measured. In that mix, we talked about top-down direction combined with bottom-up goal setting, maybe 50-50 that's crucial for alignment and for getting people engaged.
That Intel Operation Crush example seems like perfect alignment in action.
It really is. Intel needed to win back the microprocessor market. So they set this top-level objective for the 8086 chip, and that cascaded down. Engineering teams had specific OKRs directly supporting that big goal. The whole company was pulling together.
A unified effort. And Doerr talks about North Star alignment too.
Yeah, that's about making sure everything ladders up. Do individual goals, team goals, do they all clearly contribute to the company's main mission? He uses MyFitnessPal as an example. Their features always tied back to their mission of a healthier planet.
And it's not just up and down the hierarchy, but sideways too, between teams.
Super important. Horizontal alignment. OKRs help break down silos because teams often need to share OKRs or have interdependent ones. The Intuit story Doerr tells shows how transparency helps teams see how their work connects and coordinate better.
Okay, that makes sense. Superpower 3. Track for accountability. This feels like where the measure part of Measure What Matters really comes in.
Absolutely. You need data, you need to track progress. OKRs demand timely, relevant information. And setting them on a regular cadence, often quarterly, creates a natural rhythm for checking in and adds a bit of, urgency.
And those check-ins are critical.
Vital. You can't just set and forget. Doerr mentions Google requires at least monthly reviews. And then at the end of the cycle, there's the wrap-up. You score the key results objectively, do a subjective self-assessment like how did it feel, what challenges came up, and reflect on learnings.
Tell us about Google's scoring. That 0.0 to 1.0 scale seems specific.
It is. 0 to 1.0. Getting 0.7 or higher is green. You basically hit it. 0.4 to 0.6 is yellow, made progress, but fell short. Below 0.4 is red, didn't really get there.
And that scoring, like with Operation Crush back at Intel, showed that even not hitting 1.0 could still be a huge win, right?
Exactly. That's such a key point. Maybe they aimed super high and only scored a 0.6 or 0.7, but the impact was still massive. The progress was huge.
Right.
And that self-assessment part adds the why behind the number. It's about learning and improving, not just getting a grade.
Okay, that leads nicely into the final one. Superpower number 4. Stretch for amazing.
Yep.
Pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, this is about ambition. Google makes a clear difference between committed goals, the ones you absolutely expect to hit, score a 1.0, and aspirational or stretch goals.
Those are the really big ones.
The big ones, the moonshots. With stretch goals hitting maybe 70%, that 0.7 score is considered a big success. It's about having, as Doerr puts it, a healthy disregard for the impossible.
Like Sundar Pichai's goal for Crow users way back when.
Perfect example. Aiming for 20 million weekly users, then later 111 million. Those numbers seemed crazy at the time, but setting that high bar forced the team to innovate like mad.
And YouTube's goal of 1 billion hours watched daily.
Another massive stretch goal, a BHH, big, hairy, audacious goal. That target fundamentally changed how YouTube operated, what they prioritized, everything.
So these stretch goals force new thinking, new solutions.
Absolutely. They often require you to solve problems you didn't even know you had, maybe build entirely new infrastructure. They push innovation much harder than just focusing on easily achievable targets.
Now, Doerr is clear that OKRs don't just work magically on their own. Culture is essential.
Oh, hugely important. They thrive in a culture of transparency, trust, and accountability. If those things aren't there, OKRs can struggle. He shares a story about Loomis needing to do culture work first before OKRs could really take root.
And this ties into the move away from old school annual reviews towards more continuous feedback, things like CFRs.
Yes, exactly. CFRs, conversations, feedback, recognition, they're the human side that complements the OKR structure. Regular one-on-ones for coaching, giving real feedback, recognizing effort and success, that makes the whole system work better.
So OKRs aren't set in stone once a quarter starts.
No, they shouldn't be. They're works in progress. Things change. You might need to adjust a key result or even rethink an objective mid-cycle sometimes. It's an iterative process, requires continuous learning and refinement.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the core message about OKRs from the Measure What Matters?
I think it's that they are a genuinely potent, proven way to drive operational excellence. They're adaptable too, not just for tech giants. They provide a clear framework to turn good ideas into great execution and actually boost job satisfaction when done right. But it's a journey, requires ongoing effort.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? We really hope this detailed look into OKRs has given you some solid insights into how structured goal setting can genuinely fuel success.
Yeah, remember that saying, ideas are easy, execution is everything. OKRs are really a powerful way to connect those two things.
We definitely encourage you to check out Measure What Matters if this sparked your interest, and really think about how these principles, focus, alignment, tracking, stretching, could apply in your own world, your own goals.
Absolutely. And what stood out most to you from our chat today? We'd genuinely love to hear your takeaways. Maybe share this with someone you know who's looking for a better way to achieve their big goals.
Thanks for exploring in detail with us. Until our next deep dive, keep measuring what truly matters.